Listen, it's just fun. Like, I think that they have I think Miami has issues and has had issues the last several years. Well, like their offensive line. Rod, I don't think their offensive line by any stretch of imagination is going to be a strength of their team. But what does D'Eriq King do? He negates that. He makes it easier on those guys up front. So
that's right.
I think you have your playmaker, you have your star, you have your guy that can help this go and form some form of consistency, because you've seen Miami have great moments and great highs, but it's always been up and down, up and down. D'Eriq King, while not a finished product, and Rod, I'll argue he's never going to hit all of his passes. He's always going to be a little bit erratic, but his playmaking ability scares the bejesus out of me when I'm a defensive guy and I got to go get that guy on the ground.
I mean, it does speak to something about where Miami is as a program at this point. That a win over UAB, we've got some momentum, so much momentum around it. But you're right, it was an encouraging start for the Hurricanes. Let's take a look, though, at today's more driven team presented by Goodyear. A lot of ACC action. North Carolina kicks off their season against Syracuse this weekend. It wasn't that long ago that UNC felt like a place that just couldn't put together a great program. But last year, Coach Mack Brown came in, started dancing around, changed all of it. Now it's a team with huge expectations. This is what Coach had to say about those expectations when he was asked about it.
I want us to be ready to play and play great, just so we can figure out who we are. And then we can go from there. And if we don't play well Saturday, everybody will be saying we were overhyped. If we play well Saturday, everybody will say, yeah, we knew they were going to be good. But I've told our guys that scenario changes very quickly with a poor performance. So you need to play well instead of just bragging on yourself all the time.
Rod, I'll ask you, what's the ceiling or the roof for the Tar Heels this year?
Well, the expectations are justifiably high when you think about what they did last season. They really should have beaten Clemson, but for a two-point conversion they didn't get. They had some momentum, and they got a fantastic season out of Sam Howell, freshman quarterback, 38 touchdown passes, setting a freshman record. He was outstanding. You expect him to make a leap this year and be even better. The big concern I have about North Carolina is on the defensive side and in the secondary. They had 4 players opt out this season, 3 of them defensive backs, including DJ Ford. That's the only concern I have, David. I think they're a talented team, and they're ready to rock and roll, other than the secondary right now.
I think you have to have that point where you buy into your coach, Rod, where you go, that's my guy. And North Carolina had those moments a year ago. I remember as a player with Coach Rick, we had that moment in Tennessee Stadium with the hobnail boot, and you turn around and you go, we can do this. Because remember, before Matt got there, 2 wins, 3 wins. So it's not like North Carolina was loaded with talent and this was a team that you pointed to being really good every year. They were very inconsistent and obviously consistently going in the wrong direction. So prove it. Prove the staying power. Having Sam Howell back is enormous. Obviously, they beat out a ton of people last year in recruiting to get him. You saw it paid dividends. They got 2 1,000-yard receivers back. They got a 1,000-yard rusher back. Offensive line has to prove it. But the players have to prove, listen, last year was the start of what we're building, not like that's what we want to be and that's who we are, and being happy with what it was.
Pollock, you just mentioned buy-in. What did Coach Brown do to get that buy-in so quickly?
Dude, if you've ever spent any time around Mack Brown, he's got such an uplifting spirit. He knows how to pour into people. He knows how to love on people. He knows how to create belief in you. And I think that's what you've seen from great coaches, man. You talk to them and you're like, dang, I am good, bro. Like, I can go hit somebody. I can do this. And I think poor coaches don't get that same response. But, great coaches and great motivators will make you want to run through a wall. And you saw Mack Brown's now turned it around and got the excitement back like when he was there, 35, 45, 55, 65, 70 years ago.
David, such a cheap shot, David. Wow. Listen, when a coach cares about you, you will run through the wall for him. When you know that he really has your best interest at heart, and Mack Brown has connected with his players, you need look no further than the video he did about Black Lives Matter and what that meant to his team, to let them know he is all in with them on everything. He made a real connection with his players, and he did it really quickly last season.
Yeah, Pollock's absolutely right, too. And the limited opportunities I've had to talk to Coach Brown, he's just got that it factor that makes you just want to run through a wall. Now, obviously, the season starting means we've got odds on who's going to win the ACC, and North Carolina's in that conversation right now with the fourth best odds. You can see them there on the screen, Clemson, Notre Dame, Miami. I just flippantly mentioned Notre Dame. Let's remember that they have joined the ACC, which adds an extra wrinkle to UNC's rise. They're a fringe top 10 team in the minds of many. So, Pollock, what impact will they have in the ACC this year?
Huge impact. I mean, Notre Dame is going to be fun to watch. It's nice that they're finally in a conference for the first time ever in school history. It took, like Reese said last week on game day, it took a global pandemic and craziness for them to join a conference. But I'm excited to see them in the ACC. By the way, their schedule probably got easier than it did before the pandemic and before coming in the ACC. But they got a ton of talent coming back. Obviously, Ian Book, the offensive line, they're physical. This is the team that can 100%. They could win the ACC, and they could challenge Clemson. Maybe even play Clemson multiple times this season and see how they could do in a rematch situation and just push them just like North Carolina did a year ago.
Yeah, David, I think Notre Dame in the ACC this season has a huge impact. I think one of the things that happens right off the bat, North Carolina, we thought North Carolina going into the season would be right there with Clemson or have a shot at taking them down. It's not North Carolina now. It's Notre Dame. And I think Ian Book is going to wind up being in the Heisman race. And if you want to figure out their season, just look at November. That's when it really comes down for Notre Dame. They get Clemson and they get North Carolina. They get Clemson at home where they've won 18 games in a row. The big difference is, if you've ever been to a game at Notre Dame, you know that there's a huge home field advantage with the environment, with the students, with everything that goes on. That might not be the case this year because of the pandemic. They may not have a huge home field advantage, but they do play at home for Clemson, and they go to North Carolina.
David, got anything to say to that?
No, I mean, I think that when you look at Notre Dame, by the way, people are putting them in the Final Four. And Rod just talked about Ian Book being in the Heisman conversation. By the way, Heisman odds that just came out has Derek King second in the Heisman favorite. Like, as the second best odds.
Come on.
I mean, so think about that. By the way, the ACC just in a whole, when you look at this conference, it's going to be the best conference whether we had the Pac-12 or the Big Ten in there too. It's going to be the best quarterback conference regardless. I mean, it's going to be a great quarterback league, and it's not just Sam Howell and Ian Book and Trevor Lawrence. You can keep going down. Cunningham at Louisville. I mean, there's dudes all over the place that can play and spin it. So it's going to be a fun league to watch this year.
I'm going to be Mr. Positive right now because 2020 needs some of that. There's a big opportunity, as Rob mentions, that November 27th game, Notre Dame at North Carolina. Big opportunity for North Carolina to maybe get a statement win that will continue the momentum. So we'll see how that plays moving forward. If there's anything I know about the first weekend of the college football season when everybody's playing at this point, it means there's massive point spreads. It means we're all a little confused on how to bet through all of it. If you're like me, you'll take all the help you can get. So we'll get some of that right now from our friends at Daily Wager with the Daily Wager Best Bets.
Not the same long list of college football games on the betting menu this Saturday and really every Saturday this fall, but still plenty of opportunities. Alongside Joe Fortenbaugh, I am Doug Kazarian. Let's now welcome in Preston Johnson as well. Preston, what's your favorite college play this weekend?
I'm laying the 12.5 points in the first half with Army against the first snaps of the 2020 season for UL Monroe. Look, the Warhawks are in a COVID-related predicament, which might be a common theme throughout the season, but it's true. On August 21st, they had to break camp for 11 days because they had some positive tests running through the team. And it's just a situation that head coach Matt Viator said, we're going to play multiple combinations of players at multiple positions to try to figure out what our final depth chart is because they just don't know yet. They don't. And we're in this situation, an Army team that just won 42-0. It's like a glorified scrimmage. They looked as good as anybody in week one. I got to lay it.
All right, so we'll get that game under their belt. What about you, Joe?
Notre Dame's on upset alert. Kind of. Take the points with Duke, and there's a lot of them. This was a very young team in 2019, but that was a year ago. 14 starters are back. You've got your leading rusher, top two pass catchers, veteran secondary, veteran offensive line, and they're all going to be led by Clemson quarterback transfer Chase Bryson. Oh, by the way, Doug, David Cutcliffe, the head coach, is back to calling the plays this season. Take the points with Duke.
He's just one of my favorite guys in all of college football. I'm going to say not much scoring between Florida State and Georgia Tech. Look, Mike Norvell is going to get things turned around in Tallahassee. Probably not going to happen in the first game, especially the offensive line issues. James Blackman was strong at times, has a lot of experience, but I think this is a very low-scoring game because I also don't trust the Jackets' offense.
What it's like to not be playing on a football Saturday and what it will take to get their conferences back on the field. Plus, 50 years ago, second-string fullback Sam Cunningham from USC, playing in his first collegiate game, traveled to Birmingham and ran all over Bama. The convincing USC win helped push Alabama towards integrating its all-white football team. And Trevor Lawrence sits down with our Tom Rinaldi to discuss everything from his eventful offseason to why he is determined to play football this year. Here's a preview of what he had to say.
I mean, it's definitely don't want to take anything away from that year. It was still special, what we were able to accomplish, but it's a completely different feeling than the year before at that time. So I think it just puts an extra edge on how we prepare and how me personally, how I got ready for this season, and it kind of exposed some things that I know I need to get better at. And I didn't like that feeling coming off the field, like I didn't give us the best chance to win. You know, that's me personally, that's how I felt. And just from there, growing and saying, all right, you know, that's in the past, it's already done.
Saturday, Trevor Lawrence leads number 1 Clemson against Wake Forest. That's 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific on ABC and the ESPN app. Saturday Night Football presented by Capital One. Rod Gilmore, I want to ask you a little bit about Trevor Lawrence this season. In your mind, what does he have to prove?
Well, I think he's had a great offseason. We've seen the leadership skills and the empathy he's shown throughout these difficult times. But I think he'd be the first to tell you, he's got a lot to prove this season. He's an elite quarterback. There's no doubt about that. But 2019, he was inconsistent. He started poorly, 5 picks in the first 3 games, and he finished poorly in the championship game. He was outplayed by Joe Burrow just dramatically. He didn't even complete 50% of his passes in that championship game. So I think he'd be the first one to tell you that he's got to be consistently at a high level, if not elite, week in and week out. And remember this, he may not be the best quarterback in the country. Last year, we went in thinking about Tua Tagovailoa as the best quarterback, and Joe Burrow became the top pick in the draft. Justin Fields is coming, so Trevor Lawrence has something to prove right away.
Justin Fields definitely wishes he was coming on the field. That would be awesome. You know what? When you look at Trevor Lawrence, to have such a great start to your career, he didn't have anybody doubting him a year ago coming into the season. Everybody talked about him he'd have been the first pick after his freshman year. It is very nice when you get some negative fuel to your fire as an athlete and you have people that can criticize and you really, it makes you focus more, like he said, on the things he needs to focus on. The leadership skills has been awesome, but I think that the turnover plays early in the season, first 7 games, he had a bunch of turnovers and you saw it, and then it changed throughout the season. But this year's Rod, more's going to be asked of him. There's no Justin Ross. There's no T. Higgins. 4 of the 5 offensive linemen up front aren't there. So I'm interested to watch Trevor Lawrence this year. I think he's going to have a little bit more of a challenge than he's had in the past.
Pollock, when you started that, you made a comment about Justin Fields. Let's acknowledge there are kids that play football in the Big Ten and the Pac-12 that won't be playing this weekend. I want to get your thoughts as a former player, what it would be like for you if you were on one of those teams watching football, knowing this weekend you're not playing.
Y'all know my personality enough, bro. I would be pissed. I would be so irate. I would be standing in front of that daggum camera. I would be watching on TV, jumping up and down, and I would be literally, I would be distraught. I just can't imagine what those guys are going through. Listen, right, wrong, indifferent, whether you feel you should play or not, you don't get that opportunity, and you've worked so hard for it, and you love it, man. All you had to do is tell me where and when, Rod, and I'd have been there in a heartbeat, in the parking lot, wherever. And these kids not having that not having that opportunity to go out with their careers like that, man, I feel bad for them.
You think it's been bad so far. Kevin Warren, the commissioner of the Big Ten, needs to get ready because the pressure is going to mount by coaches and players after they sit around this weekend watching the ACC have the spotlight and they don't know if or when they're going to get to play.
Well, and Rod, with that being said, I mean, couldn't you say that this hangs over both sides? I mean, frankly, the ghost of Justin Fields is going to hang over Trevor Lawrence if he doesn't play. The ghost of Ohio State and how good they could have been is going to hang over the conversation about Clemson. It feels like both sides lose out of this conversation. Pollock, you're looking at me funny.
Yeah, I think that's right.
No, one side loses because they're sitting at home. The other side wins. I don't care. You can put an asterisk, you can put a slash, you can put quotation marks. I don't give a crap what you do. One side gets to play, one doesn't. There ain't no hanging over my head. If I'm Trevor Lawrence, I'm going to win a Heisman. I'm going to win a Natty. I have that opportunity. If I'm Justin Fields,
yeah.
What Natty are you going to win without the second best team in the country playing?
Who cares?
At Ohio State, they're saying this may be the best team you'll never get to see.
I'm just saying, Pollock, I know you well enough to know that you would get fired up if every time your accomplishments were brought up, somebody said, yeah, but you only accomplished that because this other guy wasn't in the room at the same time. You want to tell me that?